most of those who are listening are not English, but you might have once been tourists in England. The English are very proud. We have in London something called the Cabinet War Rooms. These are the rooms where Churchill spent the war years, and definitely in the concepts of the British, he fought the war and he was victorious from these Cabinet War Rooms. And if you go there and you see one room after the next, this one, it's still exactly the way it was in those days, with maps on the wall and charting who was where and where the different parts of the army and the navy and the RAF are. And then there's a room, and there's a big sign outside this room. From inside this room, we won the war. Of course, it's part of the English Gaiva, as Rav Shlomo says, you know, we won the war, nobody helped us, we don't need anybody. This is where we won the war. From this room, from inside this room, we won the war. If you go into the room, what's in this room? This is the broadcasting room. This is from here, Churchill addressed the nation. From here, he inspired the masses. From here is where he won the war. The war was won from the broadcasting room. Wherever I'm sitting here in front of a simple keli, but this is the keli from which Rav Shlomo broadcasts his daily shia, and this is the machine from which he contacts all the Rosh Hashivas, and this is the machine which is used for an incredible volume of our Botzas Torah. Rabbi say, I'm sitting in the war room and sitting in the broadcasting room, and it's from here that Rav Shlomo is victorious and wins the war. I have to say, Meir, Rabbi say, before we get involved in Tosfos Shabbos and the beauty of Tosfos Shabbos, I have to say, firstly, a word for all the Choshev Tzibur who give up of their time and bind themselves to a time to listen to another shir and another shir. The Medrash says in Vayechi, V'yidgu l'roiv, Klal Yisrael compared to fish. Fish live in the water, says the Medrash, and in spite of that, they have the entire ocean to drink. But if you pour some fresh water into the ocean, the fish jumps up, he wants another drop of water. Says the Medrash, you have the entire Atlantic Ocean to drink. No, but another bit of water, another bit. Kach, says the Medrash, Klal Yisrael, when it comes to the Torah. We have endless Torah, we have rooms full of Sfarim, we have people who spend days and nights learning with Chavrusas and Kviyasan and children and fathers and an incredible volume of Torah. And yet, the Tzibur wants to take another Shia and another Shia and another Shia. This is the incredible midah of Klal Yisrael, of each one of the Mishtatzvim in this wonderful series of Shiurim. Another opportunity. We're dealing with Talmidei Chacham, we're dealing with people who know how to learn, people who enjoy learning. But the Hano in another Chiddush, that's the real midah of Klal Yisrael, V'yidgu l'roiv b'karav haaretz. Meir Rabbi say, the Gemara says in Menachos Daf Yud Ches, a Meiser, Rebbe Elazar ben Shomua was the Rebbe, and he had a bunch of Talmidim. And one of his Talmidim was called Yosef HaBavli. And the Gemara says Yosef HaBavli was a Talmud, and he knew everything that the Rebbe said, and he listened to every Shia, and he understood it all, and he was involved in everything. And he had one Shaila. He asked the Shaila to the Rebbe Elazar ben Shomua in the evening, and he got an answer. And the next day in the morning, and the next day in the afternoon. And eventually, Rebbe Elazar ben Shomua answered him and said, everything that I told you is true, but there's one more opinion. We don't even paskin that way, but you should know there's another opinion. Says the Gemara, Rebbe Elazar ben Shomua saw Sa'avu Panav Shel Yosef HaBavli. His Talmud Yosef HaBavli was beaming, his countenance was bright with the hana of one extra chiddush. Sa'avu Panav Shel Yosef HaBavli. He's a Talmud Chacham, he's a Talmud, he comes to every Shia, he's asked again and again, he knows what the halacha is, but he's missing one opinion that we don't even paskin like that. One extra chiddush in Torah. Sa'avu Panav, his face lights up with the incredible joy and pleasure in a chiddush in Torah. My Rabbi say, one of the many advantages of being involved in the Shurim, in the Agudas Yisrael Torah project, is to come into contact with a unique individual, Yedidi Reb Shlomo Gottesman. Meir Rabbi Sai, Reb Shlomo spent some time here in Eretz Yisrael, and I have to say, there hasn't been 1 minute of Atola. It's been from one Rosh Hashiva to the next, and each Rosh Hashiva, young and old, has the honor of being mefalpel and learning with Reb Shlomo. But I have to say, Reb Shlomo, having spent time together during this visit here in Eretz Yisrael, the tzavu panov, the incredible honor that Reb Shlomo has, in spite of all the many shurim he's involved in and saying himself, but one new marabokim, Rabbi Kiva Igi in that shmota in Siman Aleph, a little isafa. Here, Rabbi say, the honor that he has, tzavu panov, nachepes amaramokim, an ayashita which we don't even pass him like that. How does the Gemara continue? The Gemara continues with something that we're all familiar with. What did Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua say when he saw this incredible impression of the hana that Yosef Abavli has, Tzavu Panov? What did Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua say? He said a line which we're all familiar with. Ashreichem Tamidei Chachomim, Shedivrei Torah Chavivim Aleichem B'Yosef. How fortunate and lucky Tamidei Chachomim are that Divrei Torah Chavivim, a choshev, are impressed, are wonderful, are treasured in the eyes of Yosef Abavli, in the eyes of Tamidei Chachomim. Chavivim Aleichem B'Yosef, says the Ben Yehoyada. What's the expression in this nusach that we're all familiar with? Ashreichem Tamidei Chachomim, Shedivrei Torah Chavivim Aleichem. Okay, fortunate Tamidei Chachomim, that Torah is very choshev us. It's very important. Chavivim Aleichem B'Yosef. It's all the more important. It's extremely important, says the Ben Yehoyada. B'Yosef is used for comparative purposes. If Yosef Abavli would have the same honor in a black Gemara, in an extra Chiddush, like he has in a honor of Olam Hazeh, that would be Chavivim Aleichem. Torah is so choshev, Chavivim Aleichem. Torah is so treasured and so precious. Chavivim Aleichem B'Yosef means that the honor in a Chiddush in Torah is more important to the Talmid Chacham than all the other honors that this world has to offer. Chavivim Aleichem, not only the Torah is chaviv, not only the Torah is wonderful and appreciated and valuable in the eyes of the Chachamim, but it's Chavivim Aleichem B'Yosef. It's more important than everything else that he's involved in. Rabbi Sai, I have no words to describe my good friend Reb Shlomo, who you don't even realize however much you think he's involved in 1,000 things. Right now, when he said his shiur just now, I know of the things that he could have been involved in. I know of the pressures that he had to be involved in this askonas and that deal and help somewhere else. But Chavivim Aleichem B'Yosef, noch epis hashita, noch epis havona in a shitta that we knew until now. That's Chavivim Aleichem B'Yosef. There's nothing more important in life than another chiddush in Torah, another havona in another opinion in Torah. This is the Chavivim Aleichem B'Yosef. Rabbi Sai, Reb Shlomo is an example to all of us, and it goes back all the way to the Greis Mashkiach Reb Chatzkel, who Reb Shlomo was already koina from him, havona and the Chavivim Aleichem B'Yosef, to understand what it means to value another minute of learning Torah properly. Let us, Rabbi Sai, cherish and value the leadership qualities that he possesses and that he shows, and let us get involved in another sugya and continue in this gewaltige sugya of Tosfos Shabbos. Rabbi Sai, Tosfos Shabbos. If we'll talk about it from now till Shabbos, till my Shabbos, or even till your Shabbos in America, it won't be enough to treat the sugya of Tosfos Shabbos. But that's true. We do our little bit, the little corner that we're zeicher to try to uncover in the midst of Tosfos Shabbos. More in Yuma Daf Pei Aleph learns from a pasuk. Me'erev ad erev tishpusu shabbatchem is a mitzvah de'iraisa of Tosefes Yom Kippurim, and we learn from a pasuk that Yom Kippur is a mitzvah to be moisef before and a mitzvah to be moisef afterwards, and we learn from the pasuk that there's also a mitzvah on Shabbos, not only Yom Kippur but also on Shabbos. this mitzvah, incredible mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos. It says in the sort of Sheish Avodah, when a person's Makabel Tosefes Shabbos, he gets his Neshama Yisera already then. You don't need to wait till it comes to Shabbos itself. With your Kabbalah Shabbos, you get a Neshama Yisera. It's included in the Tishbeth Shabbatim that HaKadosh Baruch Hu offers. The Pri Megadim says, Rabbi Yisrael, I'm not saying from some Hasidic Sefer. The Pri Megadim writes in Shulchan Aruch, says the Pri Megadim, if you're moisif to the Kedushas HaShabbos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is moisif to you Chaim. We're looking for skulas. We want life. We want health. Says the Pri Megadim, Tosefes Shabbos gives you extra Chaim. Not only that, Meir Rabbi said, the Chofetz Chaim brings down in Shem Olam. We know from the Sefer Tagin, and we know from the Tosefes Al HaTorah, and we know from other sources that on Shabbos, Gehenna doesn't function. Unfortunately, there are people who need to go to Gehenna, but they're exempt over Shabbos, except for somebody who's Mechal Shabbos. Says the Alshich, don't be the one to kindle the lights of the fires of Gehenna by being Mechal Shabbos. But for the average person who keeps Shabbos, on Shabbos there's no oynish of Gehenna. Says the Chofetz Chaim in Shem Olam, from when will each one of us be exempt from Gehenna on Shabbos? Says the Chofetz Chaim, from the time that you as an individual Makabel Shabbos. So it's true, you might be able to get away with 2 minutes of Tosefes Shabbos, 4 minutes of Tosefes Shabbos, 20 minutes of Shir Shabbos, 30 minutes of Tosefes Shabbos, all different opinions. But from the time when you as an individual Makabel Shabbos in this world, from that time you're exempt from Gehenna. Rav Shlomo, could you stay 1 more minute for one Chiddush? Gewaltig. There's a Gewaltiger Sefer Rav Shlomo called Ponim Masbirim. Do you know him? The Zayda. Only in your Zechus that I know this Sefer. In the Ponim Masbirim, he says, you gave out for a chasna once. Shtiklach from it. And the Ponim Masbirim, he says that the Geula comes, the Mashiach is going to come, not in the Zechus of Shabbos, but in the Zechus of Tosefes Shabbos. It says Ponim Masbirim, that's the Pshat in the Gemara, which says, Umali Shomri Yisrael, Shnei Shabbos, Miyad Hein Negalim. What's it, the Shnei Shabbos? That's the Tosefes Shabbos. Ponim Masbirim was a Chassid Sheet. He brings down from the Ruchs Abayis this shtickle, and I'm adding that Kedushas Levi Zokt that we say in Chadoidi, V'hu Yachmoil Olai Chemlo, that there's a Geula which is going to come Yachmoil with special Chemlo. It says in Kedushas Levi, that's when you Makabel Tosefes Shabbos early, you get an Achisheno. In an Achisheno situation, when do we get the Achisheno? There's a Be'ita. If you keep Shabbos Be'ita, you get a Geula Be'ita. If you keep Shabbos Achisheno, then you get a Geula Achisheno. If we're involved in Tosefes Shabbos, if we're learning the mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos, not only it exempts us from Gehenna, and not only it gives us an Neshama Yisera, and not only the Shabbos says that in the Zechus of being Makabel Shabbos early, blessing Zeicha to children, Klal Yisrael suffers from infertility, Rahman al-Islam. A school for children, a school for life. Everything that we are moisif to the Shabbos, the Rebbeinu Shem is moisif to the family. It's moisif children, it's moisif life, and it's moisif Geula. The Geula of Achisheno comes in the Zechus of Tosefes Shabbos. In the Sifsei Chaim from Chaim Friedlander, he says, Shomru b'nei Yisrael HaShabbos, although Shmiras Shabbos is done b'sheva al taisa without doing anything, but there's a madrega. How do we get to a higher madrega in Shmiras Shabbos? How do we make the Shabbos? Shomru b'nei Yisrael HaShabbos. If we undertake La'asis as a Shabbos, if I make it Shabbos at a time when it wasn't meant to be Shabbos, I make it Shabbos longer than the Shabbos needs. That's the true kiyum of Shomru b'nei Yisrael as a Shabbos. Before we start the Shir, I want to go back to time immemorial, to the first day of the creation. And it says in the Medrash that Adam Harishon met Cain. Cain killed his brother, Cain and Hevel. And he says to Cain, what happened to your did? When did you want to kill you? Says Cain, Asisi tshuva v'nis basharti. I did tshuva. When took my tshuva, and whatever einish I got, but I don't need to be killed. Pasach Adam Harishon v'Omar Mizvah Shel Yom HaShabbos. The Brisker Rav is busy with this. What's Mizvah Shel Yom HaShabbos got to do with tshuva? Cain did tshuva, Adam Rishon learned to do tshuva. Very nice. What's that going to do with Mizvah Shel Yom Shabbos? No shaykhs at all. There's one of the early Achronim wrote a sefer called Sefer Yehoshua. Babad was his name. Says the Sefer Yehoshua in the Akdama. Mizvah Shel Yom Shabbos for us is a Kabbalah Shabbos. It's still in Mishabura when it's Kabbalah Shabbos, by Lechadoidi, by Kala, by Mizvah Shel. Pashav the poskim is Mizvah Shel Yom Shabbos said before Shabbos, and with that we're mekayim the mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos. Says the Sefer Yehoshua, Adam Rishon did his chet, and he was quite convinced he's going to be killed. Going to die. He's going to die before the end of the day. He could theoretically be Makabel Tosefes Shabbos because it's still Friday. But, says the Sefer Yehoshua, if a person knows that he's definitely going to die before Shkia, then there's no mitzvah to be Makabel Tosefes Shabbos, because if there's no Shabbos, there's no Tosefes Shabbos. So therefore, he didn't bother with the mitzvah of Mizvah Shel Yom Shabbos. He doesn't have a mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos. Given that he heard that Cain said, Asisi tshuva, but his Pasharati HaKadosh Baruch Hu accepted my tshuva, he saved my life. Says Adam Rishon, I'm also doing tshuva. And when I'm doing tshuva, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to grant me life. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu grants me life, I'm going to have a mitzvah of Shabbos. If I'm going to have a mitzvah of Shabbos, then there comes a mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos. Posach va'omar, mizvah shir liyoyim Shabbos. Adam Rishon favored this mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos. There's chus to say a Tosefes Shabbos, which adds to us life and children and parnosa and hatzlacha and geula. The geula asida comes, says upon him as Meir and the Klushas Levi, in the schus of Tosefes Shabbos. Adam Rishon understands that he chaparein a mitzvah shel yom Shabbos, he can be zeicha that Rebbeinu Shem extends his life. This mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos, says the halachas ketanos. Theoretically, you could do this mitzvah at home. Sit at home and say Tosefes Shabbos, say Kabbalah Shabbos. But no. Mizvah Shir should be said in shul with a tzibur. Why? Says the halachas ketanos, because when Makabel Shabbos, Shabbos is a kala malkasa. Shabbos is a kala. We get married to the Heilige Shabbos. If we marry the Heilige Shabbos, chasna needs a minyan. Boi kala. If we welcome the Shabbos as a Shabbos kala, then you need a minyan for Mizvah Shir Yom Shabbos. The Tur says you have to say Kabbalah Shabbos with simcha. This is not my chiddush. The Tur, you have to say Kabbalah Shabbos with simcha to appreciate this mitzvah of Kabbalah Shabbos. No matter Shochatayim says you're going to say it b'shir. That's why we sing Kabbalah Shabbos, because it's going to be said b'shir. But Rabbi Isai, the other pratim and inspiration on Tosefes Shabbos, unfortunately, we have to leave for another time, Be'ez Hashem, because we want to get involved in the shir, in the understanding of the inyan and the machloiksim and the opinions of the Heilige Mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos. Those who were at the Hachana Shir of Yedid Reb Shomer have already seen all the Maramakomas, will try to address things quickly as much as we're able to do so. There is a machloikas on a general day of the week, which has nothing to do with us now. The halacha allows us to daven Ma'ariv early. If a person davens Ma'ariv early, Ma'ariv is allowed to daven. Is it still considered to be the day before? On Monday afternoon, I daven Ma'ariv for Tuesday. Is it still considered to be Monday, or it's already become Tuesday? This is a machloikas which goes all the way through Shulchan Aruch. It's a machloikas between the Ma'aril and the Trumas Hadesha. They have a machloikas whether you can do a hefsektara after you've davened Ma'ariv. They have a machloikas whether you can write a get, give a get after Ma'ariv. Is it already called night and you can't give a get? They have a machloikas whether you're allowed to wear tefillin after you daven Ma'ariv. They have a machloikas in Chasavelis. A person only hears and starts Chasavelis after he's daven Ma'ariv. Is it called he was Yotzei a day? And this machloikas is the same machloikas. Ma'aril l'shetasa in all four places. Trumas Hadesha l'shetasa in all four places. And that's not what we've come to discuss today. We want to discuss not the parsha of davening Ma'ariv on a regular day, but Tosefes Shabbos. I was Makabel Shabbos, in whichever way I was Makabel Shabbos. Does this in halacha is it considered only that I'm not allowed to do malacha? Because we learn from a pasuk, Tishbetzu Shabbatechem, that Shabbos, there's a mitzvah of Tosfos Shabbos, not to do malacha in Tosfos Shabbos, or does it indeed become Shabbos l'chol davar? This is a major discussion. Kipshutoi, it looks like there's a HaRav from Tosfos one way, HaRav there's the other way. Tosfos in Psachim, Tzadites and Beis, beginning of Psachim, is very well known. The Gemara says, Yochel miboid yoy. I would have thought you can be mekayim the mitzvah of Sipri Tzias Mitzrayim miboid yoy. Tamad loyma, bavru zeh lo yamati, elo b'shoshamatza mor monachim lefanach. Says, what's a half a minute? Pesach is coming at 7 o'clock in the evening. The Torah says, V'gat lebincha b'yoy mahu. How could a person have had a half a minute at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? You can mekayim the mitzvah of Sipri Tzias Mitzrayim. Yochel miboid yoy, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. There's no V'gat lebincha b'yoy mahu. Says Tosfos, no. There wasn't a half a minute, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you were kind of the mitzvah of Sipri Tzias Mitzrayim. The half a minute was, I'm Makabel Yom Tov. I'm Makabel Yom Tov early. I have a right to do so. Not only a right, I have an obligation to do so. Meir vad erev Tishbetzu Shabbat. I may have to add to the Pesach. I would have thought that you can be Makayim the mitzvah of Sipri Tzias Mitzrayim after being Makabel Shabbos early, being Makabel Yom Tov early. Matzu Mora, I've got a pasuk, says Tosfos, that you can't eat matzu Mora after being Makabel Yom Tov early. Why? Because the pasuk went out of its way to write v'achru es habasar balaylo hazeh. Why did the Torah stress v'achru es habasar balaylo hazeh? To tell you could only be Makayim the mitzvah of matzu Mora, Pesach matzu Mora, only balaylo hazeh, when it's night, not when you Makabel your Yom Tov early. Then we have, by extension, the pasuk is written by Korban Pesach. We learn from Ekesh, matzu Mora is the same. Then we have a pasuk, to tell me that Sipri Tzias Mitzrayim can only be done when it's really night and not from Tosfos Yom. What do we see from this Tosfos? If there hadn't been a pasuk of Achras Abasa Balayla Hazeh, if there hadn't been a pasuk of V'gad levincha b'yoyim hahu ba'avur zeh, what would the din be? I can be Makabel Yom Tov early and go right away, eat Pesach, Matzah, Mora, Sipri Tzias Mitzrayim. The pasuk only says, Me'er vad erev tishbetzu Shabbatechem, I should be Makabel Yom Tov early and don't do any of the malachas which are forbidden on Yom Tov. So it seems from Tosfos that Kabbalah's Tosfos Yom Tov is not only that I don't do malacha, but it's actually become Leil Yom Tov. So much so that I could be Mekayim all the mitzvahs already from the time of Kabbalah's Yom Tov. On the other hand, the Rishonim already are Madai Tosfos and Ksubas Stefan Zayin otherwise. The Gemara that discusses how do you know that a man has a right to the Ma'aseh Yadayim of his daughter? How do you know? Doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that what my daughter does, she's 11 years old and she works, I'm entitled to get the earnings. So the Gemara discusses over there. One of the suggested sources of the mitzvah of the rights to a father in the Ma'aseh Yadayim of his daughter is, because we know from the pasuk Spitzer that you can marry off your daughter. If you marry off your daughter, when you're marrying her off at a time when she could otherwise be working, how can I tell my daughter she has to go to the chuppah? She says she wants to work. Elamai, the Ma'aseh Yadayim belongs to me anyway. So that entitles me to marry her off, even during working hours. So the Gemara says, no, not a raya. Maybe I have no rights to my daughter's earnings. When the pasuk says, it means that I have the right to marry her off on Shabbos and Yom Tov. The Mosalo b'Shabbos for Yom Tov, and on Shabbos and Yom Tov she can't work anyway. But extra perhaps I have no right to Ma'aseh Yadayim, and on a Sunday to Friday I can't marry off my daughter. But it's the kasha. How can the Gemara say the Mosalo b'Shabbos for Yom Tov? You're not allowed to marry off. You're not allowed to make a chasna on Shabbos and Yom Tov because you have a din of Imar v'Simcha b'Simcha. You're not allowed to make a chasna on Shabbos and Yom Tov. So how does the Gemara suggest that when the Torah says B'Din on Saturday, it means on Shabbos and Yom Tov when there's no bittul malacha? It says Tosfos, that the Gemara means, you're right. During the week I have no rights to marry off my daughter because she's entitled to go and work. On Shabbos, I can't marry off my daughter because Shabbos is din eimar b'simcha b'simcha. The Gemara means the Mosala b'Shabbos for Yom Tov. I'll make the chuppah just before Shabbos, at the time when you have to anyway be makabel Tosfos Shabbos. So malacha she can't do because she has to be makabel Tosfos Shabbos. We don't throw posik. But you could still make a chuppah then because there's no Simchas Shabbos yet. There's no Isav Eimar and Simcha b'Simcha. So the Rishonim and Medayik from Tosfos, even though there's an obligation of Meir and Erev Tishbu Shabbatchem that the daughter has to be makabel Shabbos early and not do malacha, but she's allowed to get married. What happened to the din of Simcha on Shabbos? What happened to the Eimar and Simcha b'Simcha? Elamai Tosfos holds that Kabbalah's Tosfos Shabbos means that I'm not allowed to do malacha, but the other dinim of Shabbos do not yet apply. And this would seem to be a straight steerer to Tosfos in Sachem Tzadites, which says that once you're makabel Yom Tov early, it's already called Yom Tov Le'inyan, that if you didn't have a posuk, you could eat Pesach Matzah Mora and Sibitzias Mitzrayim. This is the kasha which Rochon asks in Kov Shurim and many other achronim. Incidentally, you see from Tosfos that women have a chiyuv of Tosfos Shabbos as well. The daughter has a chiyuv of Tosfos Shabbos, which is a shmuz in its own right, and Minchas Chinuch, Gedolei Achronim. That's not our shmuz now. What do we do with this steer in Tosfos? The Yishlema. We have to start with another steer. A steer which the Pri Megadim asks and the other Achronim ask. In the Shulchan Aruch himself, the Shulchan Aruch says, on Shabbos you can't make an Eruv anymore. On Friday you can make an Eruv, and on Shabbos you can't. What about Tosfos Shabbos? I was makabel Tosfos Shabbos, I can't do Malach anymore. Can I make an Eruv? This is what seems to be a steer in Shulchan Aruch. In Siman Reish Amachalef it says, we're makabel Shabbos, we go in Davon, we're makabel Shabbos, and it's already become Shabbos, you can't make an Eruv anymore. And later in Shulchan Aruch, in Reish Tzadi Gimel, it says you can. What do we do with this steer? The Mishnah Berurah brings down from the Pri Megadim. Teretz says there's a difference between a Kabbalah Shabbos of a Yochid and a Kabbalah Shabbos of a Tzibur. A Yochid is makabel Shabbos, it can still make an Eruv. Tzibur is makabel Shabbos, that's a completely different ballgame. Then it's become real Shabbos, the Chol Dava, you can't do Lamatas Malachas, and you can't make an Eruv either. What's the Avona in this Mishnah Berurah b'Shem Pri Megadim? Beis Hashem for another time. That's the Mishnah Berurah b'Shem Pri Megadim. Shai Tshuva brings down from the Dogma Mavava, from the Rebbe Yehuda, a different teretz. And this teretz, the Shulchan Aruch HaRav and Kutus Achron discusses this be'iyun. Says the Dogma Mavava, chiluk is not a chiluk between a yochid and a rabbi. It's a chiluk, how will you makabel your Shabbos? How will you makabel your Tosfos Shabbos? Says the Dogma Mavava. There's different sorts of Kabbalah Shabbos. The Kabbalah Shabbos when a person decides, I'm not doing Malach anymore. Or even verbally he says, I'm a Kabbalah Shabbos. What does that mean, I'm a Kabbalah Shabbos? I'm not going to do any Lamates Malachas. You're not going to do Lamates Malachas, but you can still make an Eruv. However, says the Dogma Mavava, there's a higher level of Tosfos Shabbos. And that level is if you make a Tosfos Shabbos by a Dova Shebekdusha. You answer Baruch Hashem HaMavorech. You make Kiddush for Shabbos. You'd have an Amariv Makadish on Shabbos. If you do something which involves Kedusha Shabbos, then you makabel Shabbos the whole Shabbos. Lamates Malachas and Kedusha Shabbos. It's all included in your Tosfos Shabbos. So there's a Tosfos Shabbos for the Malachas, there's a Tosfos Shabbos for the Kedusha Shabbos. If you makabel Kedusha Shabbos, you got the full thing. Am I obligated to do that? No. The pasuk says, Meir vad erev tishvutzu shabbatachem. The obligation is to become Shabbos early. That means for the Lamatas Malachas. Nevertheless, if you did decide to do it al yedei davar shebekdusha, then it became a full Shabbos, the whole davar. The Havana, on a simple level, is simple. Tosfos Shabbos has a minimum, it doesn't have a maximum. I must be makabel Shabbos early. Torah doesn't mind if it's 4 minutes. But if I'm makabel Shabbos 30 minutes early, then the whole 30 minutes become Tosfos Shabbos. I'm not obligated to do that, but if I do so, it's included in the rights that the Torah gave me on a deraisa level of Tishbis Shabbat. That means the Torah gave me an obligation for a minimum, and the Torah gave me the ability to extend that Tosfos Shabbos. Says the Ogul Mervava. The same way that I can increase the timing of my Tosfos Shabbos, I can also increase to what it pertains. I can say that I want my Tosfos Shabbos to be not only relative to the Melachos of Shabbos, but also relative to the entire Kedushas Shabbos. That's the Shulchan Torah of Dogma Mervava. The Meir says Dogma Mervava. In the case of the Shulchan Aruch, when you makabel Shabbos with the Baruch Hashem on Vayrach or with a Kiddush, then you can't make an Erev anymore. If you just said you were makabel Shabbos, then Lamates Malachas you have, nothing more than that. You can still make an Erev. This is very simple. There's a big makor to what he's saying in the Shitta of the Ritva and the Ra'ah, wherein the Ritva says, we don't paskin like the Ritva, but the Ritva says that he argues in the way we paskin. We paskin, you say, I'm makabel Shabbos, and it's become Shabbos. Lamates Malachas. The Ritva in Shabbos Lamed says no. The entire mitzvah of Tosfos Shabbos, you can only be Mekayim by saying a Dover Shabbat, a Baruch, a Kiddush, a Mekadesh, a Shabbos, and Shemana Esra. Says the Ritva, how do I know? Lahachi Kosav Rachmona, the Pasuk writes, Zocher is Yom HaShabbos B'Kadshoi, and it could have, the Pasuk could have written for the mitzvah of Kiddush, it could have said in the Pasuk, Zocher Yom HaShabbos. But the Pasuk said, Zocher is Yom HaShabbos B'Kadshoi. From here we learn, says the Ritva, that the mitzvah of Tosfos Shabbos can only be done al yedei Dover Shabbat. There's a machlokes in Nachronim what the Ritva means. Does it mean to stress the word Es Yom HaShabbos? The Es is marba, an addition to the Shabbos, which means Tosfos Shabbos. Does it mean from the word Lekadshoi? The Torah didn't need to write Lekadshoi. From here we learn that Tosfos Shabbos is only possible al yedei Lekadshoi. Maybe he means both. Zocher Es means the drasha of Tosfos Shabbos. And then the Torah says, how do you do this Tosfos Shabbos? Lekadshoi al yedei the Kiddush from Shabbos. We don't pass about this. Our Tosfos Shabbos comes from the pasuk Meir Erev Tishbis Shabbat. But what do we see from the Ritva? That there's a higher level of Zochas Yom Shabbos Lekadshoi. Says the Dogma Mervava, even though we learn our Tosfos Shabbos from Kabbalah Shabbos of Lamates Malachas, but we have the ability to add to our Tosfos Shabbos, to make a bigger Tosfos Shabbos, and then it'll be Chal Midaraisa, a full Shabbos. With that, he emphasizes the stira in the Shulchan Aruch. Once that's the case, we have permission, Lefiza, to firm for now the stira in Tosfos. Tosfos in Tzvi Stef Mem Zayin says the girl was makabel Tosfos Shabbos as much as she's obligated to do. What's she obligated to do? To say, I'm makabel Shabbos. What chal on her when she does that? Lamates Malachos. It's not Shabbos for Kedusha Shabbos. It's not Shabbos for Simcha Shabbos. She can still go and get married. So I found you an opportunity, an ability to make a chasna at that time. Tosfos in Pesachim Tzadik Tesson Beis says that I would have thought that there's a time when you can be Mekayim Pesach, Matzah, Moror, Tzvi, Tzias, Mitzrayim, and Tosfos Shabbos. What's Tosfos referring to? This fellow went to shul, and he davened Mariv, and he said Baruch Hu, and he said Mekadesh Yisroel Vazmanim, and he came home, he made Kiddush already for his Arba Koises. So he was Mekabel the Yom Tov, al yedei Kedushas Yom Tov. If you Mekabel Yom Tov al yedei something a Dover Shabbat Kedusha, says Dogma Mervava, then it becomes a full Yom Tov. A full Yom Tov. Then says Tosfos, you should be able to be Mekayim. Pesach Matzah Mor. So far as Moiridik, I have a Chiddush Rabbi sign. And the Chiddush is, we're running up to the Shnas HaShmita, which you always like to learn the Shmita, be Mekayim the Shmita the way we need to. The Gemara learns from a pasuk that there's a mitzvah of Tosefes Shvius. There's a discussion, how long is the minimum time of Tosefes Shvius? In Shvius, I'm not allowed to work in the field, I'm not allowed to plant, I'm not allowed to do malach in Shvius. There's a din d'oraisa of Tosefes Shvius, which means that a few minutes before Rosh Hashanah, Ba'aleim L'Toiva, there's already chal, an issa d'oraisa of all the dinim of Shemitah. The Gemara Meir learns it from a pasuk. Frek the mitzvah eitzon. Akasha. When does Shemitah start? It starts with Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is a Yom Tov which is included in the mitzvah of Me'erev ad Erev Tishbezu Shabbatachem. What does that mean? That I have a Chiyuv Deraisa to be Mekabel Yom Kippur early, a Chiyuv Deraisa to be Mekabel Shabbos early, and a Chiyuv Deraisa to be Mekabel Rosh Hashanah early, and Yom Tovim early. Frek the mitzvah. So if Yom Tov, if every Rosh Hashanah obligates me a minimum shir, a minimal shir of Tosfos Rosh Hashanah, I have to be Mekabel Rosh Hashanah early. If I'm Mekabel Rosh Hashanah early, it's become Rosh Hashanah L'chol Davar. If it became Rosh Hashanah L'chol Davar, then it automatically becomes Shvius, because with the Kabbalah of the Rosh Hashanah, I'm Mekabel Shvius as well. They go hand in hand. So you frek mitzvah. That kasha is a gewaltige kasha if you hold like the Ritva. Because according to the Ritva, the mitzvah of Tosfos, Shabbos, Yom Tov and Yom Kippur is only on the Adom B'Shebekdusha, and it's chal a full-fledged Kabbalah's Shabbos and Yom Tov. But the way we pass, the dogma of Ava is nifla. It's true, I have the ability to say, I am Mekabel Shabbos, L'chol Davar, L'Kedusha Shabbos, with a Baruch Hu and a Mekadosh Shabbos, and Shemitah will start already. But I'm not obligated to do that. What am I obligated to do? A minimal shir. To say, I'm Mekabel Shabbos or Yom Tov. Which din of Achalami? I'm not allowed to do malachas. If I'm not allowed to do malachas for Rosh Hashanah, it hasn't become shvius. I need a pasuk to tell me that the malachas, which are shviustik malachas, which are not included in the lamates malachas of Shabbos, which we can find such echetimtzas, they are already chal in the Tosfos Rosh Hashanah. There is, of course, a big kasha from Sifsei Tzaddik and others, which is very relevant to what we're discussing now, and that is when you have Yom Kippur Shachal b'Shabbos. We know that Yom Kippur is Machayev Asatainis, and it's even doicha the Chiyuv to eat on Shabbos, which according to many opinions, the Chiyuv to eat on Shabbos might even be a deraisa. Nevertheless, the Tainis of Yom Kippur is doicha the mitzvah chila of Shabbos. Frek the Sifsei Tzaddik, Yom Kippur Shachal b'Shabbos, I have a way of being Mekayim Aladinim. I'll make a Tainis of Yom Kippur and nevertheless be able to eat on Shabbos. V'yazeh, before this Yom Kippur Shachal b'Shabbos, I'll be Mekabel Shabbos. I'll say I want it to be Shabbos. Once I was Mekabel Shabbos, I can now go and eat my Shabbos tikka meal, be Mekayim the mitzvah Chida Deraisa of Shabbos, but I wasn't Mekabel Yom Kippur. If it wasn't Mekabel Yom Kippur, not yet Chal and Issa of Tzoyim. After I eat my Shabbos Suda, then I'll say, now I'm Mekabel Yom Kippur, and from now on I'll have a Tainus. That's the Grois Akasha, Sifsei Tzaddik and others. Not for now, but the Pashta answer is, it's true. If you have Yom Kippur Shachal Shabbos, you might be able to be Mekabel the Melachas of Shabbos, and not the Melachas of Yom Kippur, and not the Isurim of the Tzoyim of Yom Kippur. But to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Achilas Shabbos, what's the minimum you need for that? You need to be Mekabel a proper Shabbos, with a Mekadosh Shabbos. If you Mekabel the Shabbos completely, then you have no choice. With that Shabbos, it comes to Yom Kippur. So you have no ichatim to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Achila of Shabbos without the Chiv of the time of Yom Kippur. Let's go further, Rabbi Yisai, in the few minutes that we have left. I apologize to Reb Shlomo, who's mamash on the way to the airport, and he's delaying his departure on behalf of the Choshvet Tzibur who want to learn Torah. This is what we stand for here, Rabbi Yisai. Now we move to a very, very sensitive area. There's a kasha, a stira in the Shulchan Aruch, which the Mishnah Berurah asked, Pri Megadim asked, and others ask. I don't see any sorum on the screen over here. Reish Samach Gimel if we have it, but don't.
No, we have it.
Yeah.
We're going to go to the stira
Oh no, with Minei Ubei in Reish Samach Aleph itself, in the Bir Halacha, yes. Reish Samach Aleph Sif Yud Meis and Sif Tesvav. Yeah. Okay. Oh, Meir dik gewaltig hafle fella. This is the first one, and we're looking for the stira in Reish HaRav should be later in the Shia.
Keep on going. No.
Can we go weiter? A few more later.
Downwards.
No, noch weiter. It's going to be all the way towards the end. No, I'm not sure. Just keep going for a minute. If you don't mind. Reish HaRav, sief das Wort. Meir, sief das Wort. Was steht da? Mishu shal is fal mincha ber Shabbos, achki blak hol Shabbos, lo is fal mincha beis vis knesses. Ayele yele gut so is you can still daven mincha, but you can't daven in that medrash where the tzibur is already daven. What does it say over here? The tzibur was makabel Shabbos. I can still daven mincha. Frek the bir halacha earlier in Sifyud Beis it says once the tzibur is makabel Shabbos, I'm also b'malacha. If I'm already also b'malacha, then it should follow that together with the Issa Malacha, I can't have a mincha. A glat of stira and Shulchan Aruch. So the Bir Halacha brings down from Pri Megadim a chiddush that Be'emes and I wasn't Mekabel Shabbos. Elamai, why has it become Shabbos for me? Because I'm a toffel to the tzibur. A yochid is automatically a toffel to the tzibur. If the tzibur has Shabbos, I have Shabbos. Says the Bir Halacha b'Shem Pri Megadim, the fact that the yochid automatically becomes obligated with the kabbalah of the tzibur, that's chal only le'inyan malacha, not le'inyan other dinim, and I can still daven mincha. Meir the chiddush. We talk about tzibur was makabel b'tzibur. What does the Bir Halacha hold? That when you makabel b'tzibur, it becomes Shabbos for the tzibur l'chol davar. And the yochid, we're told in Shulchan Aruch, is nigra achar tzibur. But the yochid is nigra achar tzibur only le'inyan malacha, and not le'inyan the other dinim, even though the tzibur is makabel Shabbos l'chol davar. That's the shikol Torah of the Mishnah Brura to fend for the stira. Kipshutai, it's built on his earlier shikol Torah. Mishnah Brura l'shetasai, Pri Megadim l'shetasai. What's the Pri Megadim say? There's a chiluk between a yochid who's makabel Shabbos and a tzibur who's makabel Shabbos. Says the Pri Megadim Chiddush, when a yochid is nigrar achar tzibur, it doesn't mean that the kabbalah of tzibur is chal on the yochid. It means that the kabbalah of the tzibur makes a kabbalah's yochid on the yochid. Even though I wasn't makabel Shabbos, bal korchi is chal on me a kabbalah of a yochid. What's the kabbalah of the yochid according to the Pri Megadim? Le'inyan menocha and not le'inyan the other dinim. Imkein, says the Bir Halacha b'Shem Pri Megadim himself, if the tzibur is machayev me in Shabbos because they said Baruch Hu, it's only chal on me le'inyan melacha, not le'inyan the other dinim of Shabbos. I can still have a mincha. This shikol Torah maybe works in the Pri Megadim l'shetasai and the Bir Halacha l'shetasai. L'chayra Meir Rabbi said, according to the Dogma of Ava, we have no havana in what this means because the tzibur was makabel Shabbos al yedei Baruch Hashem and Meir. That's a kabbalah of itzuma shel yoyin. What's the din about itzuma shel yoyin? You can't have a mincha anymore. How can the Shulchan Aruch say that when the tzibur is makabel Shabbos and I didn't have a mincha, that I can still have a mincha afterwards when I'm already chal al yedei the tzibur? It's Shabbos for me, and if it's Shabbos the whole davar. According to Dogma of Ava, the teretz is that the teretz of the Mishnah Brura b'Shem Pri Megadim is not the only teretz to this kasha. The Machtis HaShekel says a different teretz. It's in the top few tests. A moiridik ufrais. Says the Machtis HaShekel. A person who hasn't davened mincha, there's no way to make it Shabbos for him. He hasn't davened mincha yet. If I've davened mincha, so the next thing in my program is Kabbalah Shabbos. If the tzibur is makabel Shabbos, then it becomes Shabbos for me. L'chol davar, l'melacha and l'Shabbos, l'chol davar. If I haven't davened mincha, then it's not chal on me a din of Shabbos in any way at all. It's not Shabbos at all for me. Not linear melacha and not linear mincha. So it's true. If I've davened mincha, says the Shulchan Aruch, then the tzibur is makabel Shabbos. It becomes Shabbos for l'chol davar. But what are we talking about here? in Sif Tezvav. This fellow hasn't daven mincha. He's asking you what's daven mincha. Says Shachar, don't daven in the shul where they daven B'Makabel Shabbos. This fellow hasn't daven mincha. If you haven't daven mincha, says the Machzor Shekel, there's no way that Tzibur can schlep a yochid who hasn't yet daven mincha. There might be other terutzim, according to Dogma of to fend for this stira in the Shulchan Aruch. We have to daven for zchus some other time to come to Havana in what the Mishnah Berurah Paskins and Simon Samach Gimel for a lady who lights her candles, which is a proper Kabbalah Yom Tov, Kabbalah Shabbos, and he says it's not possible to have mincha anymore later. It's going to be too long. It's a bit complicated to understand what side the Mishnah Berurah took in the machlokes between the Dogma Vava and the Pri Megadim. It's complicated because he was Metzaref, the Dogma Vava, although he didn't paskin like him, and that's why he's Machman Risham. It's not for now. Meir Rabbi say we should be zeicha to learn these 2 minutes chazar. We were zeicha together to learn Kodim Kol a stira l'ch'oira in Tosfos between the 2 Tosfosim, whether Kabbalah's Shabbos and Yom Tov is chal l'chol davar or lilin melachas. We were zeicha to see what looks like a stira in the Shulchan Aruch, whether you can make an erev after Kabbalah Shabbos. We learned the teretz of Pri Megadim and the teretz of Dogma Vava together with the Shulchan Aruch HaRav. Then we learned with that Dogma Vava we confirmed the stira in the 2 Tosfosim, and then we continue with the kasha of the Bir Halacha, whether after Kabbalah Tzibur it's still possible for a yochid to go and daven mincha, and l'chayr this is toila on these 2 shittas. If we'll enter and the Gebet Chassid Shabbat, yes, please. Heilige Bells Ruf Zechron Levracha, Reb Shile, the bells hat gesucht. Oh, look there. Why the Torah make a mitzvah of Tosfos Shabbos? Because we know halacha that up till 3 tvachim, less than 3 tvachim is called lovud. A full 3 tvachim is not lovud. The Rebbeinu gave us kedushas HaShabbos. The kedushas HaShabbos must be on both sides, before Shabbos and after Shabbos, but only up to the point less than 3 tvachim. Hinei tefachos nosata yomai, says the pasuk in Tehillim. The days of the week are like tefachim, like this 3 tefachim, up till a little less than 3 tefachim is called lovud. So a little less than 3 days is called lovud, is called part of the Shabbos. But that moment when you change over from Tuesday at the end of the day till Wednesday at the beginning of the day, won't have Kedusha Shabbos, won't be mushpal day the Shabbos. And the Torah wants the whole week to have the shpah of the Shabbos. What does the Torah say? Add a Tosfos Shabbos. By adding a Tosfos Shabbos, the 3 days is now going to be mashpia even on that moment in the week between Tuesday and Wednesday. Rav Shem, we continue another minute? Yes. My Rabbi is saying, Al sholosh averish noshim metzes v'shas v'dosan she'en zehiris benida b'chalo badlokas aner. Rabbi Kiva Eish tells on this Mishnah, why does the Mishnah say bad lokas aner? It should say ner. Benida, it says nida. B'chalo, it doesn't say afroshas chalo. B'chalo. And then it says bad lokas aner. Why didn't it say lokas aner? Ubener. There's a big machlokes what this Mishnah means. Einon Zahiris, there was a Maisa before my days, one of the big briskers. He got married. He said to his wife, listen, there's 3 mitzvahs given to the women. If there's 3 mitzvahs which are important for the women, I want you to be mekabel a chumrah in each one of these mitzvahs. So she turns around to him and she says, okay, I have 3 mitzvahs. Mitzvah of nida, I'll be mekabel a chumrah. Easy enough to find a chumrah. Chala, I can find you 10 chumras. Hadlokas aner, she says to him, what sort of chumrah is there in Lokas aner? It's a pashta, go light the candles. So he says, what do you mean? Instead of lighting 30 minutes before Shabbos, you light 40 minutes. If you light normally 40, you light 50 minutes. So it's easy enough to find a chumrah. So she says to him, you don't understand, she says. Doesn't this chumrah in Adlokas aner? Doesn't that chumrah in Shabbos? To be mekabel Shabbos, noch earlier, is a chumrah in Shabbos, not in Adlokas aner. She'enon Zahiros, says the Tiferes Tzion, means that you need a chumrah in each one of these 3 inyanim. You need a chumrah. The Achronim give us a remez for these 3 inyanim. Some Achronim give a remez, Chano Rosh Tevis, Chala, Nida, and the Hey, Badlok Saner. Chasam Sofer says, Asher Chonan Elekim Esavdecha, Rosh Tevis, Chonan, Ches, Nun, and Nun. Chala, Nida, and Neir. So it looks like in the Achronim, it's Bems and Machlokes. whether the mitzvah of Adlokas HaNeir is a chumrah in Neir or chumrah in Adlokas HaNeir. Rikvegi has his mahal to say that it says Adlokas HaNeir because the husband, it's a remez of the husband to prepare the Neirs, so her part is only in that Adlokas HaNeir. But it could be that this Tifur Pshat, the Adlokas HaNeir is be'emzer a chumrah in Kabbalah's Tosfos Shabbos. The women of Makabal, the Tosfos Shabbos. That's the chumrah. Zahiros, the Adlokas HaNeir. In this way, we know that when Zoichet to Chayim or Zoichet to Bonim, She'ein Zahiros, the Bonishim should bench us. We should be Zahiros and should be Zoichet to Riches Yomim and should be Zoichet to Atzlocha in alle in Yonim. Kol Tuv Sela, a grace and thank to our going Reb Shlomo Shlita.